the links for Odysee and Bit Chute. This is got walls of texts, lectures on what is pretty much just a cultural fad. It may or may not be a cultural fad. Will it catch on? Who knows? Usually people allow time for things to develop organically before they start just spraying what may or may not be a fad everywhere. Give things time to ripen and develop organically without just forcing them in on the pages of every other page of this kind of pronoun stuff. So you get that, and then you get, of course, pronouns and misgendering and nonsense like that. And then you get walls of texts, and then you get lectures. But the thing is, it's like lectures from a kid to characters who are much more experienced, and they're giving lectures. Okay, so the deal with lectures on pronouns, which I think most people are kind of getting tired of, is when do the lectures stop? This whole pronoun thing has been out for years now. I don't know, 5 years at least. Some people use this silly 1984 newspeak. Others don't. So when are they going to stop trying to make it a thing? Are you going to introduce pronouns for every character? Or is there only some characters who have pronouns and all the characters have to remember to use this person's silly nonsense made up cultural fad? And so you're going to take space out of a 22-page comic to introduce a couple of paragraphs on that. And then what happens if they forget? Then you're going to have to correct them. And then now it's like you're just setting up conflict. And this is in comics in real life. When you're giving somebody pronouns, like, okay, well, most likely most people are just going to forget your pronouns instantly. And so, like, you're going to correct them when they're in front of you. And then, like, how are you going to compel speech when they're not around you? The whole thing is freaking bizarre. And it's like, it's a cultural Marxist technique to foment discord. That's the goal of it. It's like you've created this one technique that is guaranteed to cause conflicts between people, even well-meaning, well-intentioned people, because you're in a position where you have to correct people over the most nonsense made-up thing. It's like, okay, people are going to forget. You're going to correct people. It's going to irritate them a little bit, and then it's going to irritate you, and the irritation is going to go back and forth. That's the goal all along, to irritate people. So, like, whatever you're doing, you're going to be less productive because you're slightly irritated over having to be on board this silly, it's just a fad. I mean, the internet's just a fad, 1992. Anyway, but I mean, this really is, like, I mean, there's been a lot of stuff like this throughout human history before, and it's like, stuff's in and out. Forgive the adults if the adults don't take this kind of stuff seriously. It's just a kid stuff. And the thing is, with the pronouns is, what about people who disagree with lying to people by using biologically inaccurate pronouns or maybe grammatically inaccurate pronouns? And the thing is, when it boils down to it, it's a lie. If you're asking someone to use a biologically inaccurate pronoun, you're asking them to lie. There's no way around that little sticking point. It is a material misrepresentation of reality. It's kind of like this mass hypnosis where people are just parroting nonsense in the name of cultural Marxism. We all know it's just Bolshevik gobbledygook from the usual suspects. And the other issue is it's compelled speech. You're not telling someone your name. That would be one thing. You're telling them how they have to refer to you using what pronouns. It's incredibly manipulative, especially because they're asking you to lie. You don't get to choose how other people speak. And this comic does something kind of weird. They present this Rags character as just a teenage SJW idiot. And the thing about being a teenage SJW idiot is almost everything you are adamant about or really, really excited about as a teenager. The more emotion you have invested in something as a teenager, it's probably going to be that you're going to get away from that as an adult. Not necessarily the opposite, but you're going to, with age, is going to come a little experience. So when you see, we need to listen to the children. It's like, well, we were all kids and we knew that we were all wrong as teenagers through most issues. So that's why you don't listen to kids. You listen to people who are more experienced. It's like you don't jump down people's kids' throats for it. You just don't take them that seriously because you realize, like, listen, you're 16 and you think this is very important now. When you're 36, you'll realize it's not important. And when you're 46, you'll have forgotten all about it or just realize like, oh, it was just something that, when you're 16 or 20 or something, your world is very small. So you think all these things matters. And then you get older, you realize, oh, I was just being manipulated by a bunch of Bolsheviks. It's like, yeah, that's pretty much what it boils down to. It's like, you're just manipulated and you understand, like, you think, oh, what do you mean the teachers, and you get older, you look at teachers and realize, oh, a lot of the teachers were just idiots, or they were brainwashed people too. They're not idiots. Some of them were, some weren't, but more that they were just brainwashed without ever having an original thought. They never stopped to question, like, okay, so these school boards who are pushing these books on you, are the things they're saying completely accurate, or can you question these things? Truth doesn't fear investigation, as they say. So the comic also presents pronouns as if there's no debate over the issue. One character says, use these certain pronouns, so then the other character would say, no, I can't do that. I speak my own words, not your lies. That would be, like, where would you go with that? Like, if you're developing this character universe where you're having one person explain their pronouns, and so far I haven't seen it in this comic where you have the other person say, yeah, I'm not going to do that. You're just a teenager. This is a fad. Or I'm not going to do that because it's a lie. You're asking me to tell a lie. Or because it's compelled speech. And I think this feels very manipulative. Like, yes, your name, yes, you pick your name. People will address you by your name, but you don't get to compel someone's speech beyond your identifier. It's like how the pronouns they pick for you are how they see the world. And what if they told you to salute when saying their name, or smile or laugh when they say it? Not everyone is going to be on board this 1984 nonsense, and a lot of people are not on board with it. But the characters just assume that everyone is going to be okay with this, what is almost certainly going to turn out to be a fad. Choosing pronouns only really works when you're in close contact with somebody for a long time and you can remember it. Otherwise, the pronouns is just a shorthand way of referring to somebody. Gender pronouns. There's only going to be two gendered pronouns. I'm not saying there's more than one gender identity, but there's only two gender. Gendered pronouns. Yeah, there'd be male and female, and then plural. I don't know. Technically, it's a gender, but we're confusing the semantics of parts of speech versus gender identity, which is a whole. Part of the confusion is by design, which is who's the guy who invented gender role? John Money. He's a researcher who conducted the most horrific, a globalist researcher back in the day, conducted the most horrific experiments on children. Like, I think he's the one who coined that phrase, gender role. These are the walls of text. It's a lecture about something that's a fad, and it's coming from, I guess, as a teenager. You got a lot of things working against you. A wall of text on something that just doesn't matter. None of this matters. And that's like, you're asking what pronouns is and all this kind of stuff in comics and in life is you're asking people to take you seriously for something that most people cannot take seriously because they know it's not serious. It's like, Dad, this isn't a phase. Well, it probably is a phase. The mullet, the Michael Jackson leather jacket. Yeah, that was just an 80s thing that people were into in the 80s. Yes, this is almost certainly a phase because we were all kids once. We all know how phases works. And the thing is, a pronoun is how the speaker views the world. To compel that speech is actually a deeper issue than people think. They are forcing the speaker to change how they view the world. You change the way, if you can change the way somebody speaks, then you can change the way that they think. It's an aspect of cultural Bolshevism that this kind of gets overlooked. A lot of this stuff doesn't get taken seriously, probably because there's so many other issues on our plate, which is by design. You keep people infighting, and so busy with all these different issues that they can, it's like a bill that has all these riders attached to it. You're focused on the one red herring, the shiny object, and they're sneaking in all this other stuff. And before you know it, it's like, what do you mean? Pronouns are just accepted. You'll be fired if you don't use them. That's how society's downstream, or culture's downstream from law, and law's downstream from culture. It's like, well, they're all just this mixed up together, where if you can use social media to compel behavior, you can use different business environments, compelled behavior. And then ultimately, you've got free speech. It's like, well, where if all the centers of speech are controlled by private companies, you don't really have free speech anywhere. Anyway, someone in the comments goes, "This is just DC trying to kill itself." Like, they probably should not have said that on YouTube. Damn it. Yeah, this kind of stuff is like, this is the worst of modern day comics. But I don't even look at comics anymore. I mean, I do look at them online. You know what I'm saying? But I don't talk about them because they're all like this. Like, you can go back and when I recently read the Star Trek, it's got 2 High Republic things. Both series are a little POC girl with shaved side of her head and a mohawk. Or the POC characters are the protagonists or women, and they have to talk down to the male characters and degrade them and be patronizing to them and humiliate the male characters. And then the other one is a little blonde-haired, green-eyed boy who's the bad character. All 12 issues, he's the antagonist, and the POC girl with the shaved head is the protagonist. Like, well, I see that in every comic I open up. If I see a black girl and a blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid, I can tell you the protagonist and antagonist is. That should be random, and it's not. It's 100%. It's like, oh, blonde hair, blue-eyed, blonde hair, light eyes are going to be the bad character. Oh, what percentage of the time? Every single time. Oh, so like, what percentage of the time is the African girl the bad character? None of the time. Maybe if it's some kind of Wakanda comic where they're all African, it's like, okay, maybe you have an African character who's a bad character. But other than that, where there's a choice, black and blonde, and you just put them down next to each other, you're like, oh yeah, it's 100% antagonist, protagonist. Yeah, and you guess right 100% of the time, because you always know the blonde's going to be the bad. That's why there's kind of no point in looking at comics anymore, because it's when you look at the cover and the story's already told. It's like, oh, well, there's no willing suspension of disbelief when you see blonde hair and you know he's going to be the bad guy, and you know it's going to, you're going to straw man to make him the bad guy. It makes for a very dumb story when the cover is the conclusion of the story. You don't even need to pick it up, which means you don't need to buy it. Anyway, this is nonsense. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next episode.